Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a very exciting video. I'm going to discuss all of the pans that I hit in the first quarter of the year, as well as all the eyeshadows that I finished. I have a pile of eyeshadow palettes next to me that I'm going to discuss, and I'm just going to go through the eyeshadows that I hit pan on first. But before I jump into those eyeshadows, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So we're gonna start with the first eyeshadow that I hit pan on, obviously, and that comes from my Anastasia Sultry palette. This was in my Pandos eyeshadows, and I hit pan on the eyeshadow Fresh in here. It was very kind of give me eyeshadow. I rolled this in for an everyday eyeshadow, and it took me 10 uses to hit pan on it, but I already had quite a big dip in it before I rolled it into that project. But that is the first eyeshadow I hit pan on this year. The next eyeshadow that I hit pan on comes from my Panda palette of the year, which is my Nikkie Tutorials Beauty Bay palette. I hit pan on, the first eyeshadow I hit pan on in here this year was the shade Roxy Catan right here. It's like a beautiful kind of pinky, it's like a rose gold kind of shade, but it's a bit more bright. And this one took me 6 uses to hit pan on. Next up we have another eyeshadow that was in my Pandos eyeshadows, and that comes from my Soft Glam palette from Anastasia. And the eyeshadow that I had in was the shade Rose Pink, which is this shade here in the middle on the top. It's more of a satiny kind of shade, and I actually topped this a lot with Roxy Catan, which I just showed you, and I paired those two together a lot because they work really nicely together. And this one took me 7 uses to hit pan on, as you can see right there. We're continuing on to things that have been in my Pandos eyeshadows. The next one comes from my New Light Obsessions from Huda Beauty, and I was working on the 6th shade in here, which is this eyeshadow right here. This one took me a little bit longer to hit pan on. It took me 12 uses. Still not a very long time, but a little bit longer than other ones I've shown you. I love this palette. It's a beautiful kind of rosy romantic kind of palette. It will actually work really well with my outfit today. But yeah, I love this palette a lot, and I'm happy to now have 3 pans in it. The 5th eyeshadow that I hit pan on comes from my level 1 palette from my project Level Up, and that was my Club Nebula palette from Eyeshadows. The eyeshadow I decided to hit pan on in that project was the shade Celestial down here, and this one took me 6 uses to hit pan on. Next up, we're coming back to my Panda palette, and I have 2 shades to share with you. The 6th pan that I hit was in this kind of neutral brown shade right here called Mila. It's not that neutral in real life or like on your eyes. It's very orangey toned, but that is the next eyeshadow I hit pan on, and it took me 12 uses to hit pan on it this year. Obviously I've used it before, but this year counting it took me 12 uses. Then the next shadow we have is also again from this palette, and that is this shadow here, which is Blend and Snap, and this one took me 6 uses to hit pan on, and I have continued using it since then. But yeah, that is the next shadow. The next eyeshadow is also from my Pandos eyeshadows, and that comes from my Love Nose palette, another Beauty Bay palette. And this eyeshadow that I was working on was the shade Sparks, which is this one down here. I rolled this in the project for something started with like eyeshadow started with S, and it took me 7 uses to hit pan on this one. The Beauty Bay formula is quite easy to hit pan on, and especially the shimmer eyeshadows. But yeah, I really like that eyeshadow, and that is the next one I hit pan on. We continue on with the Beauty Bay palettes, and the next eyeshadow comes from our Beauty Bay, what's this is called, Book of Magic palette. Sorry that just slipped my mind for a second. But the eyeshadow I was working on here is the shadow Enchanted, which was this purpley eyeshadow up in the corner right here. And this one took me 13 uses to hit pan on, so a little bit longer, but it is a matte. And yeah, I really like that eyeshadow. It was very kind of easy to hit pan on still for being a matte though, I would say, because you had to build it up a lot because it's such a light eyeshadow. But I used this a lot to blend out other purpley looks, and yeah, I really liked it. So we come to eyeshadow pan number 10, and this one comes from my level 2 palette in my project Level Up, and that was my Subculture palette. The eyeshadow I hit pan on first out of my 2 pans in here was the shade All Star right here. You can see it's like a very tiny pan, and I have a lot of pans in here now. I'm going to show you another one I hit pan on in a second in here, which was also in my project Level Up, but that was the next one, and this one took me 9 uses to hit pan on. We're coming back to my Panna palette again. The next eyeshadow I hit pan on was another kind of focus eyeshadow that I had for the month of February, and that is the shadow Mikai, which is this red one there in the center. You can see the pan, and this one took me 8 uses to pan on. It's quite a bright eyeshadow, but I really like this one. It's like the most true red eyeshadow I think I have in my collection, but I don't use it very often because it's so out there. The next eyeshadow that I have comes from Beauty Bay again, and that is the shadow Sorcery. I actually haven't written down how many uses it took me to pan on this one, but I know I tracked it in my deck of panning, so I should look that up so I can add that into my notes, because I'm going to count the kind of average uses to pan on something at the end of the year. But yeah, so far I haven't added it in, so I will have to do that. But yeah, the Sorcerer's eyeshadow is this one right here. It's another purple. I quite like it. It wasn't as easy to pan on as this one here because it's a bit deeper, but since I still use quite a targeted brush, it didn't take too long still, if I remember correctly, because I did build this one up quite a bit, because when I do colorful looks I usually like pack on the pigment quite a lot, and that's also what I did with this eyeshadow. So you have come to the next eyeshadow that I had in my Subculture palette, which I teased a bit earlier, and that was the eyeshadow here called Fudge. That is the second eyeshadow that I hit in my product level up, and this one took me 9 uses to pan on as well, so same amount of time as All Star. So next up we're actually moving straight on to my product level up level 3 palette, but this eyeshadow actually doesn't come from this palette, but I did work on this one in that project. However, I hit pan on the shade Volatile, which is this one down here, and it was actually my Panos eyeshadows before I rolled this one into my product level up, but as you can see I did hit pan on this one and it took me 6 uses. Before we come back to that palette, because we will come back to it, we have another eyeshadow pan in my Panda palette, and that was the eyeshadow, where am I on my list? It was the eyeshadow Pride, which is this pink shadow down here in the corner. This one took me 13 uses to pan on. I really love this eyeshadow. It's a beautiful kind of duochrome shadow. Yeah, it's stunning and I can't wait to keep working on that one. But this one took me, like I said, 13 times to pan on. So then we're straight back to my Norvina palette again, and the next eyeshadow I pan on in here was the shade Rose Gold right here. This one only took me 4 uses to pan on because I already had so much use on it. Like I had a big dip on it before I rolled this palette into my product level up. So yeah, not too many uses, but I do really love that eyeshadow, hence why I already had such a big dip on it. And yeah, that is the next pan. So we're jumping quite a lot between my Norvina palette and my Panda palette, but because the next eyeshadow also comes from here, and that is the eyeshadow Ew right here, which is this green shadow. This one took me 9 uses to pan on. It was also a focus eyeshadow in my project for March, so that is the next pan that I hit. So last time we're moving back to my Norvina palette, we have 2 pans to share. The first one is the eyeshadow Passion, which is this one down here. This one took me 10 uses to pan on. I really love that eyeshadow. It's a beautiful deepening up eyeshadow and I really enjoyed that one. So that is the next one. And then lastly for this palette we have the shade Dazzling, which is here, and I actually pan on these two in the same look, and Dazzling took me 6 uses to pan on. Then we have actually come to the last pan that I hit this year, and this is actually a little bit of a spoiler for my Panos eyeshadows, which I will have up next week. Actually, it might be this week, because I think this one will go up on Monday, if I'm not misremembering. Actually, maybe this one will go up after. Let me check my filming schedule. Yeah, this one actually comes up after my Panos eyeshadows, so it won't be a spoiler actually, because my last video was my Panos eyeshadows. But the last pan that I hit for the quarter comes from this eyeshadow right here, which is Terra Moon's Cinnamon Sugar. This one took me 12 uses to pan on, and I really enjoy this eyeshadow. I rolled this in for something that you want to pan, and yeah, it was a stunning eyeshadow to work on, and I'm also happy to pan on it because I don't have pan on a lot of my indie eyeshadows, and I also have a decent dip around the pan, which I'm really excited about, because that's kind of how I want my eyeshadows to look. I don't want them to just look like I've dug down to hit pan, if that makes sense. So that is the last eyeshadow that I hit pan on for the quarter. So if you've been counting, I think I already told you, but that was 20 pans, which is really good, because I think my goal for the year is to hit 50 pans, and I've already in the first quarter hit 20. And if I keep that up for every month, or for every quarter rather, I will hit 80 pans this year, which is insane. I mean, again, my goal was 50, but the more pans the better. So I'm very excited about progress so far. I think I'm also gonna have to focus a bit more on finishing eyeshadows, because I'm behind on that target, although usually you finish more eyeshadows towards the end of the year than the beginning, at least for me. But let's move on to the eyeshadows that I have actually finished this quarter. And it'll be quite quick to go through them. The first one that I have to share with you is this one right here, which is a Super Shock shadow from Colourpop, and I had this in my year-long rolling project pan. And as you can see, I did finish this one up, so that was the first eyeshadow that I finished this year. I didn't have too much left of it, and I was very determined to finish this one up. So I think I finished this up in January already, maybe in February. I think January. So yeah, that was the first eyeshadow that I finished. And then the second eyeshadow that I finished comes from my Panda palette from last year, which I'm still trying to finish, and that was my Modern Renaissance palette. I still had a little bit left in Red Ochre, but as you can see, that eyeshadow is now done, and that is the second eyeshadow that I finished. And that is actually it for eyeshadows that I finished. As you can see, I'm quite close to this one, which is my goal for this month, for the month of April, is to finish that shadow. So hopefully I will be able to do that. Then I only have Love Letter left in this palette, which I hopefully will be able to finish in the next couple of months. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than I was originally hoping for, but that would mean 2 more empties definitely for next quarter. I do actually think I can finish maybe a couple of eyeshadows from my Panda palette as well, depending. Actually, I'm gonna franken some eyeshadows, which I will film soon, and I think that's going to go up at the end of the month, but I will film it at the beginning of the month. And with those frankens, I don't know if I'm gonna actually finish eyeshadows up completely as early as I thought, because they will be in frankens, but we'll see. I guess the big picture is that I need to finish them before the end of the year, which I think will be easier if I franken them. But yeah, so we'll see how many I have next quarter, but I definitely will have these 2 done. That's my main goal. And then I think maybe if I can get like maybe 1 or 2, so maybe having 4 eyeshadows finished next quarter, that would be amazing. If you don't know, my goal is to finish 20 eyeshadows this year, and I only have 2 so far. So I mean, it would be really good to have at least 4 next month, because then I'll be at 6, and I have 14 left to go for the second half of the year. But we'll just see how it goes. Again, I feel like it's going to be easier to finish eyeshadows towards the end of the year, because for example with my big Panda palette, I think those eyeshadows will take quite a while to finish completely, and I will have them done for the second half of the year, if that makes sense. But that is actually it for today, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you're also tracking how many eyeshadows you finished and hit pan on this year, let me know down below how many pans you've hit and how many eyeshadows you finished. I would love to know, because I always love learning about other people's panning. I know we all pan at different paces, so that's why I find it so interesting to know how you guys are doing. So please let me know down below if you're doing something similar. Also, don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.